You've probably seen this building a million times, right? It's a global icon, a symbol of democracy. But what you might not know is that inside, a centuries-old power struggle is happening every single day. So who's really in charge here? Let's get into it. This is it, the Palace of Westminster. The one right on the River Thames in London. It's basically the command center for the entire UK political system. But don't let that grand, historic exterior fool you. Yeah, because inside, it's not just one big happy family. The UK has what's called a bicameral system, which is really just a fancy way of saying it's split into two separate parts, or chambers. And believe me, they do not always see eye to eye. And here they are. On your left, you've got the famous green benches of the House of Commons. And on the right, all decked out in that regal red, that's the House of Lords. They look totally different, and as we're about to find out, they work in totally different ways too. The real drama, though, it all comes down to how their members get a seat in the first place. And that right there is the heart of the whole thing, the fundamental clash between a chamber chosen by the people and one chosen by, well, very different means. Okay, so here's the absolute key difference you need to know. The House of Commons, it's all about democracy. It's got 650 members of parliament, we call them MPs, and they're elected by people like you and me to represent a specific local area. Simple enough, right? But then you have the House of Lords. It's got around 800 members, and get this, they are appointed, not elected, and most of them are in that job for life. So who are these elected MPs anyway? Where do they come from? Well, this chart gives us a pretty good idea. Almost a third of them had careers in politics before even getting to parliament. And then you have big chunks coming from finance and law. And that's led to some criticism, The idea that parliament can sometimes feel like this professional political class that might be a little out of touch with what everyday people are actually going through. Okay, so now let's flip over to the Lords. Who are these folks? Well, most are called life peers. They're appointed for their expertise in things like science or business or the arts. But, and this is where it gets kind of wild, you still have 92 hereditary peers. These guys are there just because they inherited a title from their family. Seriously. And to top it all off, you've got 26 bishops from the Church of England in there too. So yeah, a very different crowd from the elected commons. All right, so you've got the elected house and the appointed house. What do they actually do? Well, they have two main jobs, and they're totally intertwined. At the end of the day, Parliament has two massive responsibilities. First, to make the laws that run the country, and second, to keep a close eye on the government. Hold them to account and make sure they're not getting too powerful. And both houses are absolutely critical to making that happen. Man, getting a law passed is a marathon, not a sprint. A potential new law is called a bill, and it has to go on this incredible journey. It gets introduced, then debated, then a committee literally picks it apart line by line, and then it's voted on. But here's the kicker. After it survives all that in one house, it has to go over to the other house and do the whole thing all over again. This back and forth, sometimes called parliamentary ping pong, is all designed to make sure every single detail gets checked. And it's not just about lawmaking. A huge part of their job is keeping the government honest. They do this through these really intense debates, by grilling government ministers with tough questions in public, and they have these super powerful groups called select committees made up of MPs from all parties that launch these deep dive investigations into really important issues. All these checks and balances are vital, but they're also what sets the stage for the big showdowns. Okay, this is where the real drama happens. What happens when the elected House of Commons and the appointed House of Lords just completely, fundamentally disagree on a new law? Right, so here is the number one rule of the UK's unwritten constitution. The elected house always wins. At the end of the day, because the House of Commons gets its power directly from the voters, it has the final say. This is especially true when it comes to money, laws about taxes and government spending. By tradition, the Lords just aren't supposed to block those. And there's another really important tradition. It's not a law, but everyone follows it, called the Salisbury Convention. What it basically says is that the Lords won't block any bill that was a major promise in the government's election manifesto. The thinking is, hey, the people voted for this stuff, so the unelected House really shouldn't get in the way. But, and this is a huge but, the Lords are not just a rubber stamp. For most other bills, they have a pretty serious power. They can delay them for up to a whole year. Now, that doesn't kill the law forever, but it slams the brakes on, forcing the government to stop, think again, and, a lot of the time, come back with a compromise. And do they use this power? Oh yeah, They use it a lot. Just look at that number. In just 1 year, between 2015 and 2016, the government lost a vote in the House of Lords 60 times. 60! That tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the Lords take their job as a check on the government's power. Probably one of the biggest clashes in recent memory was back in 2015 over something called tax credits. The government was saying, hey, this is a financial bill, it's our territory, the Lords can't touch it. But the Lords said no way, and they voted against the government's cuts anyway. It caused this huge constitutional debate about where the line is drawn, and it was the perfect example of that raw tension between the two houses. So where does that leave us? Well, it means the whole relationship between these two chambers is this incredibly delicate and, yeah, often pretty uneasy balancing act. You know, a really good way to think about it is like this. The House of Commons is the engine room. It's noisy, it's powerful, and it's fueled by the direct democratic mandate it gets from the public. The House of Lords, on the other hand, is more like the review board. It's filled with experts, with people who have decades of experience, and their job is to check the blueprints, spot the flaws, and try to prevent any big mistakes before it's too late. And really, that's the dynamic that beats at the very heart of the UK Parliament. It's this constant negotiation, a real push and pull between the raw power of the people's will, which you see in the Commons, and call it the wisdom of experience, that sober second thought offered by the Lords. And all of this leaves us with a massive question, especially today. In the 21st century, is an unelected chamber like the House of Lords a vital safeguard that actually makes our laws better and keeps power in check? Or is it an undemocratic relic from another time that has no place in a modern country? That's the debate, and it is far from over.